Y'all. Welcome to On the Rec Yard, Women's Prison Podcast, where we are live on the rec yard every Wednesday night. Looky there, we did it.
So great. I'm very pleased with the new intro. I want you to know I really love the jamming.
I love when you're just happy with the way I've done things. Always a miracle when I do something and you're immediately happy. So that I feel like I should get like a gold star or something, or I should be patting myself on the back because that just rarely happens. You guys, we're so glad to have everybody. We are live on the rec yard because it is Wednesday night. We're here every Wednesday night. My name is Marcy Marie.
And I'm Toonchi.
Toonchi, here we are. It's Q&A night.
Q&A night. It's anything goes. It's, you meet your friend on Wednesday night at rec and you talk about your day and random stuff. That happens.
Yeah.
So we're so glad everybody can join us on the rec yard tonight.
I'm so excited. I'm reading these random new messages that are coming up in the studio, and I don't know what to do with them. And that's for after the show.
What do you mean?
It distracted me. It's talking about our Facebook group. So,
okay.
You guys, my mom's on right now on the podcast. This is her, and her name is not Gerald. That's my dad's name, but she's logged in under my dad. Hi, Mama. We are taking questions tonight. Toonchi, I'm going to LA tomorrow.
I know, aren't you? It's so exciting.
I am so excited. And do you know when my parole pass, my travel permit pass, do you know when I got it?
Well, I feel like it was maybe just a couple of hours ago.
It literally was. I was sweating it. I woke up like at 4:30 this morning and thought, oh my gosh, I don't even have my travel pass yet. Like, seriously, going to LA, I have all these big plans and I don't have a way to get there, and it's scary. So, yeah, I got it, and it was a big, huge sigh of relief. And so now I was like, wow, this is really happening. We're going. And we have a question. I'm streaming on TikTok also. And so we have a question. Kim Abbott says, and you're staying with Rosie?
Staying with Rosie.
And I might have prompted my TikTok community to ask
about it. It's okay, honey. I mean, that's what scripted reality is all about.
Yeah.
I do want to say hi to Coretta because she says, what's up, Toonchi and Marcy? I know Coretta isn't able to always join us sometimes because she's super busy advocate, but wanted to make sure we shouted her out. So how are you feeling about this?
Yeah, I'm only staying with her the first night, one night, because we're actually going for a TikTok collaborator deal. But she invited us to stay with her. And so we're flying in early. And yeah, that's what's going to happen. I cannot believe it.
Well, I mean, Rosie's such a sweetie. She always has been. And I think it's really, I've watched her over the past couple of years, talk about criminal justice reform and social justice reform. So I don't know. It's really cool to see somebody who's so high profile that embraces us without any fear. She doesn't give a damn what people think. She doesn't. That's what's so great about her. She doesn't give a damn.
So when I started this deal with, yes, Shaquille, it's Rosie O'Donnell. When I started this production deal with her, I went to, I was at the St. Mary's School of Law. So we were doing an event there, and I'm going to forget her name because I'm just so terrible about it, but she's with the Innocence Project, and she was one of the famous 4 that got exonerated.
Was it Anna?
Toonchi, was it Anna? I
Probably.
think it was Anna. I was on a in a table discussion. I was on a panel with her, and she said, "So I heard you have something going on with Rosie O'Donnell," and I was like, "Yeah, I actually do." And she pulled her phone out and scrolled through. Rosie O'Donnell had hosted an Innocence Project deal after they got out of prison. They were falsely accused in the early 90s as teenagers. It was when that big, that like devil worshippers scare, how kind of we have a transgender scare right now. It was like that, but it was like everybody's devil worshippers and they're trying to take over the world. And yeah, so that happened. Golly.
Yeah, we should have already brought up when we were talking about infamous and famous incidents in Texas. We should have brought up the San Antonio Four, because they were young and they were lesbians and they were all hanging out and they got accused of witchcraft and harm to children. And it was pretty fantastical. And these women got some major time, and we know several of them. And they got exonerated and got paid for it, which is almost unheard in Texas, because there wasn't a DNA, as far as I know, the evidence claim, right? They were it was so egregious. They were like, y'all need to be compensated for the years that you were there. So I'm glad you brought that up.
And that's exactly what happened. Is it was a ridiculous charge, and it was a witch hunt. And they were arrested and spent a decade in prison, and they should have been compensated because they were innocent.
Yeah.
And so Anna is like big time in the organization, the Innocence Project, and that's how. So it was really cool to see that connection. It was just like, man, if I thought I loved Rosie before, I really love her now after seeing her work there. So my honey is on. And
I just saw that. I was like, look at Brittany.
Oh, she's never on. My girlfriend Brittany has some questions, and I might have prompted her. I didn't know what she was going to ask, though, but I did say, babe, we're doing a Q&A tonight, and I need some questions seriously. And so, and I see some questions on TikTok regarding Elizabeth Holmes, so I want to get to that also. But Brittany, my honey, who's going to LA with me tomorrow, she says, when y'all were actually on the prison yard, did you think you would be doing this now, as in all of this advocacy work? Tunchi, you go first.
Oh, well, I'm going to tell you that the first 10 years, no, I didn't. It was a whole nother experience. But the second 10 years as an adult, I saw the world very differently then. And yes, the short answer is yes. I did have my girl drama on the rec yard, and lots of it. But Diane, who is also with our advocacy group with Linus, she did 20 years. Alexa, we all did. We all walked that rec yard talking about our plans for the future and the things that we wanted to do for the women we left behind. So it was mapping out years of getting to where I am now, where we all are. So I'm going to say yes.
Well, I will say absolutely not. I didn't even know it was happening out here. When I was in there, I felt like nobody cared, honestly. I mean, I thought my mama cared and my dad cared. You know what I mean? I didn't think that there were these organizations that were fighting to improve conditions for us in there. And I remember one visit, my mom will tell this story, that one time she came to visit and she said, Marcy, what are you going to do when you come home? And I told her, I don't know, Mom, but I have to do something to help these ladies. And in my mind, that something was keep in contact with mail, or try to start maybe a fundraiser to send hygienes in. Or, there was another lady, Hannah Overton. In my mind, I thought maybe I would get with Hannah Overton's cause and help her. Like, these are the things. I never in my wildest dreams did I believe that I would be at the Capitol in front of lawmakers. That never happened. I have a question and she's asked it several times, so she really wants to know it
She's
on my
persistent. Let's get
yes,
it.
and I think it was Seed Saddle. She says, "How do you think Elizabeth Holmes is adjusting to prison life? And do we think that her prison in Bryan is less aggressive than maybe where we were?"
Well, I think that she's adjusting. That's what you do. Your first couple of weeks, your first couple of months, you're still getting your bearings. You're learning a new culture. I mean, that's exactly what it is. She will be fine. Surely we've recognized that Elizabeth is a savvy, cunning woman, right? For better or for worse. She's smart and she's brilliant, and she will find her niche there in that community. She will. Um, that particular federal pen, the feds, there are some federal units that are terrible, especially in Texas. The one in for women in the Fort Worth area up there in North Texas COVID tore through that in ways that were just atrocious. But I think Texas state prisons, their conditions are, honey, they're barbaric. They're just barbaric. But in terms of, the environment and the women and the culture, it's the same. It's the absolute same. It's just the nature of the buildings and maybe the Texas element of harsh on justice, which, could bleed into there too. What do you think?
Well, I think for sure it's a less aggressive prison. It's nicer conditions, and I think she'll have it easier in that aspect maybe than Tunchi and I had it doing our time in a Texas state prison. How do I think she's doing like right now? I think she's probably under her covers crying a lot, because that's what people that first get incarcerated do. Like, the reality of their actions comes crashing down on you. And, I think that that's probably what's going on now. Like, she's trying to cope with that. But just like Tunch said, she's going to jump right in there. She's going to find herself some friends. She's going to do just fine. She's going to make it out just fine. Denise Cherry, Denise did a lot of time in a Texas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
One of my girls right here. I just adore her. She's still pretty fresh out.
Mm-hmm.
She's asking, did we think that being so involved with advocacy work for prison that we would have to give up some of our private life?
My goodness. Cherry coming in with the heat. Coming in. That's a great question. And I recently really had to confront that, and Marcy and Lori really know this, is that when I was helping put together Finish the Five, which is a campaign to close the last 5 remaining youth prisons in Texas, I'm intricately a part of that because I was once in the Texas Youth Commission and suffered a lot of horrendous abuse in there. And so as we're working on this, right, and I'm saying, the very kids that legislators and, other people say are not redeemable, that because they've done something violent, that's a lie. That is an absolute lie. And they say, why? And I say, well, because I was one of those kids. And they're like, what did you do? And it's like, now I'm at a crossroads, because the first time in 4 years, I had to decide what was I going to do. Because Marcy knows, and all my friends know, that especially my childhood offense is very deeply personal. And I try to respect the victims in all my charges, but some of my personal stuff, this is the risk I'm taking, and this is the deal. So, I had to make a choice, and I was open about it. Do I get on my lives and my social media and my little TikToks and do that? No. But yes, absolutely. You are any public figure and anybody that's doing any advocacy work, you have to know that being, and Marcy told me one time too, I was like, girl, my she's like, I can't tag you. I said, well, my Instagram is private. She said, girl, you're a public figure. You better take that off. And I was like, damn, she's right. You know what I mean? So there is a choice that you have to make, because your life does become an open book.
It does. And Denise has interest in going into youth facilities and sharing her story, which would be phenomenal, because she was a baby when she got charged with her crime and incarcerated, and she could change lives. You have that in you. I did time with you. I've been around you. You are a leader. You are positive. I mean, I think that would be, I encourage it all the way. Absolutely, for sure. Shaquille Oatmeal's coming in with a good question.
Golly, now you asked for questions, and I thought we were going to get, what kind of music did you listen to on the inside? Now people are asking,
They're coming in hard, right?
like I'm gonna call you on your, in a good way.
Asked me about my charge, and I'll get to that. I'll answer that one next. But let's talk about this. Shaquille's asking, how do we feel about the death penalty?
Well, Marcy, how do you feel about it?
I'm against it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely against it. And we both also do some work at an organization that I will take an opportunity to shout out. It's called the Texas After Violence Project. It is a community-based archive that collects stories of state-sanctioned violence, because that's what we call the death penalty. It is state-sanctioned violence, and it doesn't heal communities, and it doesn't heal victims, and it just creates more trauma. But Marcy, I remember even as a kid, like, I don't understand how killing somebody is going to teach somebody that killing is wrong. How does that happen? And it's not a deterrent either, right? Because if it was a deterrent, we would have already seen that it worked, and it doesn't.
I remember being a small child, and one of my second or third cousins, or like my dad's cousins, they had a son, and we were in the pool, and their son cussed. And I remember his dad heard him, which is like our couple removed cousins. I don't really know how that works, but he came and snatched that kid up and whooped him and was like, "Don't you ever effing say that, SHIT." And I remember being like 7 going, "Whoa, what?" And I feel like that's the same thing. And then violence begets violence begets violence. It has to stop somewhere. So the people in prison, and frankly, probably the people that are on death row, have experienced some kind of violence in their life, and that led them down a road that made some kind of violent act happen. And now we're just going to put another violent act on it. No, I don't think it's right. So yeah, definitely against it. TikTok has a question asking about my charge. I share it often. It's always the pinned video on all my platforms, so you guys can definitely listen to that. It's one of the first videos I recorded. So my charge is theft over $200,000. I got involved with doing some kind of cooking the books at my place of employment, and I ended up taking that a whole step further and taking money. And I got a 20-year sentence for it. I did 10, been home a couple years. So yeah. And then someone else is asking, how similar is Orange is the New Black to reality?
Oh, well, it's interesting. I really love that Orange is the New Black brought women's prisons into the, forefront, into popular culture, into people's, started thinking about these things, right? Because we're always so invisible. But I always say this, that Orange is the New Black, in terms of the relationships and the dynamics and the intrigue and she's going to cross me out and stab me in the back. Like, to me, that was spot on. In terms of like the more conditioned things, or and by conditions, I mean them freely being able to do this or have certain things, or, and then towards the end when there was the riot and they buried somebody out in the back, that's very soap opera-y. But in terms of the relationships, I'm going to say yes. And I know there was a super hot scene in the library. I'm going to say that I had my hot scenes in the library, but it was not like that. It was not as free-spirited and porn-like, but
you were getting down. You worked in the library while you were incarcerated, and you were getting down, honey, in the library.
By getting down, I mean a quick kiss and a quick little bow chicka wow. You know what I mean? But
But not a red hot, steamy sex scene. And I want to point this out because I speak to so many, especially men, guys. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but it just seems to kind of come from your gender more, thinking that it's like those kind of scenes in
God.
as Orange is the New Black. And it is far from that. I mean, even in the shower, guys, it's
No.
not that sexy because
Honey, who want? I mean, you
the
do
shower
sometimes.
walls are filthy. It's
Mm.
tiny little space, and so that was definitely dramatized for views, right?
Yeah.
And then someone else on TikTok is saying, "Wait, but Orange is the New Black, they had AC." But I'll point out that that was a federal prison that they were in. And we were talking about Elizabeth Holmes. Guess what? She has air conditioning this summer. My girls in Texas, unless they're just at the Princess,
Don't do that.
the Mountain View unit.
Honey,
So
but they got to dodge a lot of psych patients with a lot of aggression. So let them. They've got their own demons to deal with. Hey, I want to tell you, I did see somebody ask, "What kind of music do we listen to?"
I
And I
heard
know you passed it because you don't want to hear it.
I was trying to skip over because I didn't feel like talking about Taylor Swift. Do we have to bring her up every episode? That's what I want to know.
But this is what kind of music does Marcy like to listen to too? What do you like to listen to?
Well, when I was in there, you know, we only got 3 stations. So I listened to all 3 stations, right? There was and my daughter teases me, y'all. So I film the podcast in my daughter's apartment because her Wi-Fi, I'm out in the sticks and my Wi-Fi won't allow it, right? So when I get here, she always has her Google Music on for her cat, and she listens to very different music than me. And I can't even think of one of the artists. But what I always do is when I leave, I'll tell Google to play Justin Bieber playlist. I do love Justin Bieber.
You don't, guess what? You don't ever get to tease me about Taylor Swift ever again that you've admitted in front of everybody you like Justin Bieber.
Okay, I like Justin Bieber, but I'm not obsessed. That's the difference.
Honey, you have borderline personality disorder, and I just busted you out in front of everybody, but you told everybody before, so I'm sorry. So you know we get a favorite person, and you know that we get a person we obsess on, right? And that's just what she is. It's just, look, I got a ring the other day. It says anti-hero.
Okay, so that's what Tunchi listens to, and that's what she listened to.
And Madonna.
And she was probably one of those, she was probably so obsessed with Taylor that when somebody else heard it on the radio and Tunchi didn't even have her radio on, they were probably like, Tunch, 97.5. So
I'm like, oh, I got to get to it.
That's right. So the name of the podcast is On the Rec Yard Women's Prison Podcast. We're live here every Wednesday night at 7:00. Thank you guys for joining us.
Brandon.
We're taking your questions tonight. And Ashley Hansen's asking, do we watch 60 Days In?
I don't, but I know that y'all were going to be on there at one point.
Well, they asked us. They did. They asked me and my girlfriend, Brittany, and I hadn't been home that long. It was last summer. So I hadn't been home a year. And it was enough money that at that time I was working at a warehouse in Amazon. And I thought, well, that sounds like a pretty dang good deal to me. And my girlfriend was like, and here we are like dealing with the producer. And she's like, well, we're not snitching on people that we're locked up with. Like we ain't no snitches, you know? And Brittany's like, but I'll tell them the law, you know? So that's kind of how we managed it. And she was down for that. But then when it came down to it, y'all, my family, I brought it up to my parents and I thought they would be kind of excited, and their faces dropped. They were panicky. They were still, the trauma from me being gone for 10 years is still so real. Yeah. And to answer, do we watch it? I don't watch it. When that was going on, I watched a couple episodes and I was like, it's like dramatized. It's super, like they take all the most dramatic moments and cram them together in an episode. But I thought, yeah, I could handle it. Could I handle 60 days in a county jail? Yeah, easily, standing on my head, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Tunch, do you want to answer that? They're asking about your charges, and you don't have to go in depth. You don't.
Well, I don't mind. I mean, like I said, I mean, I think over this past legislative session, I've been more open about the original one, and that was because it was bringing awareness to the youth prison system, and I felt like that was worthy of that, right? When I was 15, I was in crisis. I was in a mental health crisis. Girl, that BPD was out of control. My mental health disorder was bad, and someone ended up losing their life. So I was committed to the Texas Youth Commission and then transferred to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. I was given 20 years, did 10. Not, usually doesn't happen like that, but I was young, was doing really well, got out, working at a nonprofit, and, symptoms return with stress without treatment. And it returned fiercely. And now the second charge, I really don't mind talking about that. Even though I still try to be mindful and respectful of my ex-girlfriend. But I was coping with my mental health with alcohol. And Marcy, I'd never drank before. I mean, I was like a 25-year-old, 15-year-old in my head, and so I'm discovering all this stuff with no guidance, and then my mental health out of control. And so she was super toxic. It was just terrible. And I got drunk and broke into her house and beat her up. And the police came and got me and said, no, we don't do that out here. And, and some of this was not just alcohol, Marcy. That's what prison taught you to do. If your girlfriend does some shisty stuff, if she's being disrespectful or she breaks up with you or whatever, right? You respond with violence.
It's expected.
It's expected. It's a matter of you're disrespecting me. This isn't about you need space or you need to make decisions for yourself. This is a complete, total affront, disrespect to me. Like you had said, like someone spitting in your face,
right.
And that's how I perceived it. And, you do that through a cloud of alcohol and mental illness. Yeah, I climbed up on a roof and threw myself through her bedroom window.
So there's a couple things, right? So there's been studies that have found the age of young people when they get incarcerated and then they do a significant amount of time. There's parts of their brain that don't develop past that age.
Yeah.
So when you get incarcerated as a 15-year-old and you come home as a 25 or 30-year-old, there's part of your brain that still has some growing up to do, right? So that happened, and then you experience so much violence during that time in your life, state sanctioned violence, state violence, even not sanctioned, right? But and so all of those factors led into that. And I just want to say, Tunch, let me just take this opportunity, because you are like the super example of someone that can completely, like, looking, we looked at you on paper, we might not even believe that's actually you. If someone looked at you on paper, they might be frightened, quite frankly.
Oh yeah.
Not that it's a long list, but it's just these incidents. And so I just think that you're a prime example of one reason why we need to keep pushing for what we're pushing for, right? Is for reform and rehabilitation and giving people real opportunities. Absolutely. So someone had a question up here, and I'm going to try to scroll. I'm sorry, you guys might be seeing my armpit on the podcast.
Nice. Very nice.
Well, I cannot find it, and I tried to remember it. I'm sorry. You guys asked me the question again, and I'll look. And I am getting. I'll just put this up here because they're making fun of me for Justin Bieber.
Honey, I don't want you to tell anybody else that ever again. I just don't.
And when my middle school daughters get in the car First of all, I'll tell you this. When I first got home from prison, I was so excited because I liked all these like the Jonas Brothers and like I'm down with them. I love them. And when the girls, so I'm like, I have kids that are this age, you know, they're gonna want to like listen to this with me. Oh no, they made such hardcore fun of me. It's not even funny. And when they get in the car now, they're like they plug up their phone or connect their phone to the Bluetooth right away because they're not about to. They are not about to listen to Justin Bieber. They're not doing it. So, um, Shaquille's asking if we have ever thought about writing a book geared toward a prison survival, like a prison survival group book.
I don't. I mean, I've thought about it maybe just briefly over the years. I feel like within our advocacy group that's just for women, um, I feel like the women that show up that I know that somebody contacted me and was like, I'm on my way to Safe P. What do I need to do? Like, I feel like women do find us for that kind of advice, but you know, I don't know. What do you think, Marcy?
I don't know. It kind of almost seems like first of all, I think that it's needed because people do need guidance, but I don't want it to be perceived of like a pass, like go ahead and do that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If that makes sense. That's what I worry about. Like, how could we do that? But for sure, because in my DMs all the time, uh, it says, you know, they say, I'm facing this, I'm facing this. What do I need to do? How do I do? And even if it's 6 months in county jail, you need guidance, like wear 3 white t-shirts when you go to court. You know, these kind of things people need to know to make their time. So maybe this is something we need to consider. Maybe it can be on the rec yard project. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, guys, we need some more questions. My TikTok community up here, give it to us. Jennifer Max says she works for a nonprofit in Austin that focuses on non-punitive treatment for adolescents with substance abuse disorder, which is phenomenal, right? That's incredible. So thank you for your work for that, Jennifer, for absolutely sure. So yeah, Rhonda's asking about what about a re-entry guidebook? How would that look?
Well, I think the struggle with reentry guidebooks and here's the issue, right? Like I think that you could have the advice about like how to socially reintegrate and the things that you're going to face and practical advice. But if we're talking about like a guidebook, like where to go, go here for food, go here, like the problem is that those places change so often. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it. And so like information is constantly out of date in terms of housing programs, food programs, and it just can feel very overwhelming trying to compile that stuff.
We need an online database that can be constantly updated or some way. So yeah, I it that is frustrating because even the reentry resources at reentry in the prisons, like you jot all these numbers down and these addresses down, and then you get home and they're like out of date, wrong phone numbers out of service.
It's
Um,
that fast. And the only thing, Marcy, I've seen come close to what you said, what we need, right, is the Judicial Commission on Mental Health has a interactive map with all the counties on it, and you click on it and it opens up that county and it lists all the stuff that a person would need with mental health issues and maybe who have been touched by the criminal justice system. That's the only thing that I've seen. And people in every county, there's someone in every county responsible um, for updating that, which there's a lot of counties, right? So sometimes it's really hard to find somebody to maintain it. But if we could duplicate that, or often I just send people to that map because you can still find, I at least trust that those resources are up to date.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you're right. We could do it in a different form, right? So that's definitely that's definitely an option. I was looking here, they're asking about why you would need to wear several white t-shirts if we're going into county jail. So I had several people ask that. Why would we need to?
Well, honey, you need more than one t-shirt, put on double panties, double socks. And they're going to be white, right? So a lot of county jails will let you keep those items. And if you have more than one, and I think it's, up to 2 or 3, right? So make sure you can have, because your family can't drop them off. You got to have them on. So have them on when you're, getting booked in.
Or you have none. You either have them on when you go in, or you do without. If you don't have a pair of white cotton panties on when you go into the county jail, you're not going to have panties for, if you were where I was, for 3 or 4 days. No panties. And I'm just going to just throw this out here. Sorry for the guys that are watching, but if you're on your cycle, that's an issue. You don't have a pair of drawers.
Marcy, I'm going to, again, just be vulnerable with everybody because I'm not embarrassed about it because it wasn't my fault. When I was in Fort Bend County Jail, they didn't give us any undergarments, like you said, for a while. And your feminine hygiene products you had to buy from commissary. They wouldn't give it to you. Now, there's been some legislation since then, but you didn't get, so guess what? I don't have any panties on. I don't have any underwear on. And I've got that little jumpsuit, not jumpsuit, but the little, ugly uniform. And I'm going to court for my arraignment. And I am holding wadded up tissue to inside of my pants with my hand. Well, now they've got to handcuff me. And somebody's holding me because, girl, I was out of my mind. And so I'm trying to hold this between my legs as I walk. Girl, it fell out. It fell out down my pant leg. Thank God, on the way back to my cell, right?
Oh, gosh.
And it wasn't one of those things where I had to sit there all day and wait for my turn. It was pretty in and out. So that didn't happen in the courtroom, but right before I got to my cell. And I remember I was very embarrassed at the time because the guard was this really pretty, bougie, mean white girl. And when it fell out, she looked at me with just disgust. And she goes, "What the is that?" And it was like, I couldn't even explain to her because guess what? Here's something weird. For 2 months after I got arrested, Marcy, I couldn't talk. I was so flipped out. People would talk to me and I couldn't speak. They thought that I had lost my mind. So I just stared at her. But yeah, that's true. So, being a woman in prison is super hard.
You were in shock, Tim.
Yeah.
You were in shock. Golly. Well, Daryl Peoples says, who was the coolest person you met in prison? The coolest.
Who was it? Do you mean coolest by just like this person, or do you mean famous? Or what do you mean in Daryl by coolest? Well, let's just answer it how we think. What about you, Marcy?
Well, I think it's probably maybe one of these like the old schools, how you would call it in prison. Maybe you say that out here, but
yeah.
Somebody that had done quite a bit of time already. She had a life sentence. Her nickname was Scorpio. So shout out to Scorpio. My Lane Murray girls know exactly who I'm talking about. And I don't know if just the way that she carried herself with such confidence, like, I don't know. She had a way with the way the class system kind of went where I was locked up is the longer you had been incarcerated, the more say you had, right? So that was kind of how it wasn't based on anything else except for who had been there the longest. Mm-hmm. And so she was the person you could go to if one of the laws was saying something completely out of line and was somebody like going to write you a case. That's who you could go to because she could talk to the law, but she wasn't a snitch.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And everybody trusted her to talk to the law. Like it was that. So I would say Scorpio.
I'm going to do this because when I was thinking about it, I was like, I've met some very interesting, and of course my friends that I have now, Well, obviously it's Diane or Alexa, and they're in that group. But in terms of coolest, when I think of that, there was this girl, and her name was Brenda Blake. Girl, this was like 1998, and I just knew her for a year. I can still see her. She had real blonde hair like you, uh, real blue eyes, kind of stocky white girl, real femme. But she had this way about her that she was super relaxed and fun. She was funny as hell in that really dry sense of humor way, and she never lost her temper. Um, and she just was probably one of the coolest people I'd ever met my whole time there. I wonder what happened to her, old Brenda Blake.
Oh, Brenda Blake, if you hear this,
Well,
find
she's probably 60, 70 years old now.
well, I was going to say find her on social media. And then why did I just have a ageism thought thinking she wouldn't know how to do that? But girl,
Honey, that was so bad.
it was bad. And it was the first thought. And
Society.
I
Yeah.
checked myself because she's not too old to understand. That's ridiculous. And I live with living proof. My 82-year-old grandmother is the TikTok queen. Like she's on everything. So Taylor Baker has a great question. She is asking, why do we think these politicians keep voting against the AC bill? You guys, Texas prisons, in case you don't know, 70% of the Texas prisons are not air conditioned, and we have been fighting legislation for it. Texas A&M did some research a couple years ago, and their research showed that prison temperatures in our living quarters where we slept and lived at ranged from 110 degrees all the way up to 149 degrees. So why are the politicians not doing anything, especially when they have all that extra money right now? Literally, quite literally, they do.
Well, I was discussing this with one of those reporters maybe a week or two ago, and the House. I'm going to say I was really impressed with the House because we had a lot of bipartisan support for the AC stuff. It was the House put it in their budget. Um, it was phenomenal, and we have worked really hard for years to get to that spot. Hardcore Republicans, said during that hearing, like, I can't imagine human beings trying to. It doesn't matter what they've done. My God, the Senate is where the buck stops, y'all. When it comes to Texas politics, that's just what it is. And the head of the chair of the finance committee, that's where that bill went. She was like, no, we're not hearing that. And the Senate has made it clear that I don't care if we have extra money. We're not air conditioning prisons. And I think it's because of that old mindset of it's a luxury, right? And we got to be tough. And we've got all these people that need other vulnerable people that need something. We're going to give AC and comfy surroundings to people who are in prison. And I think it's just maybe, I don't want to say a failure, but an area that we haven't really spent a lot of time just really working with advocating in the Senate. Now, that being said, TDCJ is doing what they always do, Marcy, behind the scenes, slowly air conditioning units at their own pace, in their own way, because it has to be their idea, period. And they don't want the lawsuit. So it's going to happen. I just don't think that our legislators want to be the ones to show that they approved it. But behind the scenes, it is slowly happening. Too slow.
Right. And we're just talking about it's about to get really hot in Texas, right? It's already started. Texas heat is a huge health risk. I'm getting all these comments. Brandon's talking about how you can't buy a fan at intake or transfer units. And that's like those guys don't even have a personal fan. And then Uriah's talking about he used to have to he was on the top bunk. And so the top bunk, y'all, has a little lip all the way around. And he says he would fill that with water in the summer to sleep. These are some of the things that people are quite literally dealing with incarcerated right now. So yeah, it's really something. So That's
Well,
a great
see, I was watching you throw hearts, and maybe we can. I have a question.
You have Coach, we talk all the time. You could ask me whenever you want to. Go ahead, ask me. Go.
So when you got to prison, how did you learn? What was y'all's sign language like at your unit? I want
Okay.
to see if it's any different.
Well, and I just did a video on this not very long ago because my girlfriend, I was following her. She was in her truck and we were stopped somewhere and her back window was open and she put her hand out her back window and signed to me. So I'm old school way. I don't know. Mine is spelling out the letter with my hand. And this is a heart. Like this is what we do in the free world as our heart. In prison, this is what it was. And so you could do a big if you saw somebody from way across, or you could do small, like maybe if you just somebody was walking by, you'd be like, and you were in a conversation, but you wanted to acknowledge that, hey, that's my friend walking by. I know her, I love her, and this is how I would do it, right? Just a little heart. But I learned old school. Now these people coming up, they do some like
They do like I was talking to some guys one time and they were like the how did y'all sign? And they were like, well, we learned sign language. We spelt out the alphabet. And I'm like, oh no, we literally just drew.
Yeah.
You can, like you said, I had to do it very slow. Me and my girlfriend, I'd be in G dorm, she'd be in H dorm, and we'd be like this. And I'd be like, girl, you got to write the whole letter for me in the whole window. And we'd have to do it real slow. But girl, some of them folks could be moving so fast. I was like, I don't know how you can read it that small and that fast. And
see, I was fast. I was fast with it. And you would have been somebody that completely frustrated me trying to communicate with you.
It's too fast.
I would give up because I wouldn't have patience for it.
I would have just done that.
Yeah, this sign.
And instead of like hearts that were big like this, my girlfriend would be like, do you love me? I'd be like, yeah, like this little bitty heart.
So Brandon on TikTok, he was saying that men's sign language is similar to ESL. Mm-hmm. And then Brandon White is saying with a couple of twists. So they must have put a little
like Tex-Mex.
Right, like Tex-Mex, exactly. Yeah, we literally spelled it out. And if you were behind a cell door and there was a mesh window there, then we would be like this on the window and it would be nonstop. Your hand would just be going. And we were trained to read it. And the officers, for the most part, couldn't, because when you're going really fast like that, yes, they know you're spelling out a word, but their brain is not trained to read it like that because they haven't been practicing it like us, right? But we had a couple officers, man, they knew all the gossip because they would sit in the middle of that dorm and read our conversations. And
well, how much did they freak out about y'all signing? Because oh my God, they were obsessed with lesbianism and signing on Mountain View.
We didn't get too much. Now, if we got around certain officers, or if you were in the Chow Hawk, God forbid you even waved at somebody that you knew in the chapel. Yeah, you're not signing like that. But man, on Main Street as you're walking, that was no big deal. And I'd be walking away from my girlfriend and signing backwards. And she'd be reading reading it. And that's how we communicated. They're asking about, they're laughing. Brandon says, I don't think real sign language swipes between words, because you would sign a word and then that meant next word, but it's real quick. So he's telling me in the men's prisons, they would be signing and then next word. Winona's asking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of IPTC and halfway houses.
Oh, God.
That's a tough one. We both went there. We both had those programs. The difference, or for me at least, so COVID was happening when I went through the halfway house and through the IPTC, in prison treatment, something, I don't know. I went through it, but we didn't do anything. COVID. So it was completely frustrating to me because here I was granted my parole, still in prison, but on parole at the same time because I had a parole officer there on the unit. It was such a weird concept. And so for me, it was not great. I'll tell you what was great, that I knew I was going home.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? So would I have given up my parole answer not to do that? Absolutely not. But did I dread doing it while I was eligible for parole? I remember saying, I hope I don't get Safe P, which is that
Jeez.
program.
And that's what that you got, you know. I had to participate. It was actually right a year before COVID when I was there, and I hated it. It was horrible and just terrible. I did get some things out of the cognitive behavior therapy classes because that was with a real psychiatrist. And it's finally something that spoke to the treatment of my mental health disorder. So that helped me. And then outpatient, um, that did help me. But the program and the unit trash. Marcy, you have put some questions in our post that we need to answer in the next
Oh,
10
okay.
minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want you to answer it. And while you're looking that up and deciding which one to go first, I'm going to say that IPTC, it has an aftercare. And even though the programming for the aftercare is so micromanaged by TDCJ that the counselors can't actually do, I had a great counselor and I had a great group of people.
Mhm.
Right? So that the peer that going re-entering and then having that group of peers, that was phenomenal. So
Yeah,
that was a good. So I came up with a good.
you did. Yeah, that was good.
Okay, here's
Um,
the question.
Marcy, were you attracted to women before you went to prison?
Well, I get asked that so often. That's one of my top 5 questions that I get asked regularly, at least a couple times a week on one of my platforms. Somebody's going to ask that. So here's the deal, guys.
Here's the deal.
I've been married twice before to 2 men.
Mhm.
And now I am living with my girlfriend that I met in prison. We are in a very committed relationship, completely building a life together. But Tunch, even though I had never been in a long-term relationship with a woman prior to my incarceration, I have always been attracted to not necessarily women and not necessarily men. I'm attracted to what you have inside, your spirit, whatever energy you're bringing me. And it's happened that, both ways. So, yeah, that's how that works for me. But I get asked a lot, and it's a fair question, right?
Yeah.
Ask me, did prison turn you gay? Well, prison can't really turn people gay, right? No, nobody can really turn you gay. Now,
Right.
does it make you experiment? Possibly. Do circumstances make you experiment with things that you might not otherwise? Yeah, but so okay, good question.
Yeah, so the question you had for me on that post was, has Tunchi ever been in an inappropriate staff relation?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that was in the post. Yeah, I just wanted to know, Tunch, because I feel like, okay, you were an undercover bad girl in prison because you didn't get in trouble, but you did dirt. And I think that you kind of had, and this is my opinion because we didn't do time together at the same place. We weren't at the same place. So what do I know? This is just my interpretation of knowing who you are now and the little tidbits you share with me about your incarceration. I feel like you might have had an inside with some of the laws.
No. Yeah, believe it or not, I have such an a wounded animosity towards the officers, and I know Miss Keen's on here, and she was one of the few that I really cherished that treated me like a human. I just felt like it was such a betrayal and a disloyalty to the women around me, and I just never, never like. And I had a couple hit on me and come my way. And you are right about I was a bad girl, but it was very much in a very different route than you took, but certainly we were the same in the sense of taking care of what we need to take care of. um, but no. Now I did really have two very close relationships with some of the people that worked in the education building. That I'd worked with one of those ladies for 8 years. She was my boss, and I saw her as a friend. And the times that one or two times when she acted like a staff member, girl, I was devastated. I wouldn't talk to her. I wouldn't talk to her for like 2 or 3 weeks. And she's like, Toon, are you still mad at me? And I would be like, yeah, I am. You don't get your cake to eat it and have your cake too. You don't get to treat me like a friend and a coworker and then treat me like an offender. No. Um, but I understood it was her job and it was, her retirement. And another lady there that was one of the secretaries that I just loved as a person and a friend, and she never ever treated me like a person with a uniform on. So I guess that's as close as it got, but certainly no bibbity bobbity sneaking around. I couldn't stand that kind of stuff at all. It made me angry when other people did it, not because I'm a old bitty hater, but because it's just such an imbalance of power.
Yeah, I agree, but I just felt like maybe you had a little something, and not necessarily sexual, but I felt like maybe you had a little in. So thanks for clearing that up.
Well, I'm full of surprises, honey.
Denise Scruggs is saying that maybe we take all of this a little bit too lightly, and all of this probably meaning our prison experience. And I'll just say that this is probably a lighter episode, right? Because this is just a Q&A and people asking us. And sometimes I think people might perceive that maybe we're taking it lightly, or even I've been accused of, like, you seem proud to have been to prison. But when we're telling stories that are putting a smile on our face and having good memories, we have good memories because there are good people in prison. So we made a lot of good memories, right? And so that sometimes can be perceived. But honey, go catch up on some of our other episodes and you'll
Right.
know.
Yeah.
You'll know
You
we don't take things very lighthearted at all.
probably change your mind. And I want to add to Marcy, what you're saying is, you know, I had somebody one time tell me when I made a joke about going through airport security. She was like, "Well, I just not sure. I think it's funny because what's happening in our criminal justice system is bad." And I said, "Well, I understand. I was there." And some of the ways, if not the number one way that we survived, was through a lot of humor and a lot of dark humor. It saved our lives. So that continues on. And I want to say this too. I earned it. I earned to take it lightly if I want to. I mean, I'm just trying to, it's my experience. I've, paid my dues, and I'm still learning and growing from it. So it's my experience to handle it how I see fit and how I feel like it's meaningful. So that's my 2 cents on it.
What else do we have, guys?
Hey, Marcy, we got 2 minutes left, honey, and we were going to remind everybody that the podcast, now you're watching us here probably on YouTube or Facebook. Girl, we just send it everywhere. We want to capture everybody so everybody can enjoy. But our podcast page, profile page for Spotify and Google Podcast and Apple and stuff, if you go to the link I posted on Twitter, and we'll post it other places, you can leave a voice memo anytime you want to about anything that we say, any episode, and we can play it here. So please utilize that because I think it's cool, and it'll be a way for you to participate if you weren't able to be here live. So please do it.
And we do just have a minute left. And so we need to say that next week we won't be live, right? Because we're going to pre-record that episode because I'm going to be on an airplane during this time.
Yeah.
1 week from now, I'm going to be on an airplane coming back from LA to here. And so we're going to pre-record, and we're actually going to record the episode while I'm at Rosie O'Donnell's house. So maybe
Fingers crossed. Maybe she'll.
she'll hop on here with us. So we're gonna see. And then it will play at Wednesday night at 7 Central Time. So you guys can catch it at the same time. It just won't be live. Now, what will happen is if you guys ask any questions in the chat, I'll be on an airplane. I won't be available like to see it live, but we'll answer afterwards. I promise we won't like leave you guys hanging. If you guys leave any questions for us, do so. Do we want to say what we were going to talk about next week?
We were going to talk about, I think, relationships.
I think so too. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to try to get Rosie O'Donnell's opinions.
Talking about girl on girl. So,
and just the whole dynamic. She's very intrigued. The project that I'm working on with her, that question comes up with her and with the writers. Like, I had a relationship in prison that turned into a free world relationship and is long term. And they want to know, like, how did we communicate? How did we boom chicka wow wow? Like, did that actually happen? And so these are questions that are going to be answered next week, right?
Yeah, it'll be fun. We'll get to. We should have some good stories between the two of us. Lord have mercy.
I think so too. Thanks everybody for hanging out. You guys are awesome. Y'all came with some great questions. We appreciate all of you. Love you all. And we will be here pre-recorded next week. Not quite live, but we'll still be here. We're not going to leave y'all hanging, and we'll see you then.